Hey, there you are. I'm so glad you came by. I hope today has brought you nothing but reasons to smile. I've been wanting to deliver this message to you for a while, so sorry for the delay, but for the sake of titles, we'll call it Middle of the Mountain. Middle of the Mountain. We know the bottom, right? We know it's sometimes called the valley or the bottom part of the mountain. We know that part, right? Where there's a lot of traffic going on. It's like a downtown LA in our life. Nothing seems to be going right. We're catching all the red lights. There's wild dogs. There's people screaming. There's all kinds of stuff going on. You can't seem to get your footing. Things don't seem to be going as planned. It's just a hard time. It's a hard time down there. And then you have the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain is fun. It's great. It's that I reached my goal. It's I bought that first house. It's I had my first baby. It's I found the love of my life. It's I managed to get all the way through college. It's whatever it is that you sought out to do, you did through the grueling, through the middle, and through the top. Now we talk about the bottom and we talk about the top, but it's not always we talk about the middle. And I think that's probably the most important part of the mountain. And I'll tell you why. So the middle part of the mountain is interesting because you're too far up to go back down to the bottom. You're like, I've came this far. I don't want to go back to where I started. I've come too far. You really don't want to go back down there. And it's not quite the top. So when you look up, you can almost feel a little bit deflated. You're like, I still have how far to go? I'm not even halfway there. Like, I don't know if I have the courage. I don't know if I have the capacity. I don't know what I have, but the top seems almost ridiculous right now. It seems like I can't even see it. I feel like it's way, way, way up there. And so there's a lot of things that can happen in the middle of the mountain. The other thing I noticed about the middle of the mountain is what used to get you by at the bottom, it's not going to get you by getting to the top. There's those recycled behaviors, those recycled habits. The middle of the mountain calls for stretching. It calls for some new things within you. And those aren't always comfortable. Because I think once we feel we understand something, that's it. There's no changing it. There's no looking at it any differently. There's no adding to it. We've got that part under control. Well, the middle of the mountain sometimes will prove you different. And that's when you go, I never would have thought that until. I never would have tried that, but then. So that middle of the mountain brings out some different things in you. The other interesting thing, there's many interesting things about the middle of this mountain. At the bottom, the valley we're talking about, the bottom of that mountain, we talk about you can hear a lot of things, right? But it's a lot of external things. You're so much concerned about making sure that you're protecting yourself when you're on that bottom in that valley, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of hurdles. There's some failures. There's just things to where you're more observing what's going on around you and protecting yourself, that you're almost on such a high defensive mode that you can't really hear what's going on inside because it's not safe enough. It's not safe enough to be quiet and go within and see what's going on. So you carry all that with you as you're hustling to get to the middle of the mountain. And at the top of the mountain, you hear differently as well. You hear some beautiful things. You see some beautiful things. So there's no place like that middle when your inside starts talking. And it's not always the funnest. It's not always the nicest talk. It's certainly not the talk that you hear at the top of the mountain. But it's that, who do you think you are? Just because you got this far doesn't mean that you're not any better than where you came from. It's that, all those voices you may have heard from people in your life who told you that you weren't going to be able to do a certain thing, or that, what you were dreaming for, what you had your heart set on was bogus. And you start to hear all that in the middle of the mountain. And you also start to hear the things that you have led yourself to believe about yourself. And if that wasn't healthy, if you haven't been taking care of yourself emotionally or trying to put yourself and your mental health as a priority, that middle of the mountain, it can get real dark, real dark in the middle of the mountain, because there's nobody there. It's you face to face with either we're going to go up and we're going to fight for it, and we're going to stop and get the strength that we need right here in the middle so that we can keep going forward, or you're going to say this is too much, release the rope and go back down to the valleys and to the bottom of the mountain and say it just wasn't for me, or find whatever reason will appease you before, again, you try to go up. Because here's the thing, we don't get to avoid mountains. They're all over in our life. We're going to continue to go through mountains. And I don't think it's how you act at the bottom or even the top that dictates how well of a mountain climber you'll become. I think it's what happens in the middle. Will you repeat something or try to catch a lesson 20 times or one time? And I'm convinced if you stay in that middle of the mountain just long enough, if you stay there just long enough, you'll pick up what you need to in order to become an expert climber. Because at that point, what you're going to do is the things that I suggest you do. And let me say this too. A lot of times when you're in the middle of the mountain, because it does seem so daunting, and it does seem like I don't want people to see me fail, it almost becomes such a hard critique that you just want to disappear. And I think that's where a lot of people let go of the rope sometimes. Don't disappear. Hold on to that rope. Get what you need in that middle, but don't let go. Don't let go. Keep believing, keep having hope. But here's what I'll tell you that I've found that has helped in the middle of my mountains, and I'm sure it can help you too, at least some of it or most of it, or maybe it's not for you, but I know that this is for somebody, and I know that it helped me. One is, when you're in the middle of the mountain, be okay with looking at you. A lot of times we want to avoid ourselves during that middle of the mountain time because we think we've done something so wrong as to why this part seems so long and why it seems that things just aren't jiving, they're not going, we don't have the strength, opportunities aren't coming up, the momentum is stopped, we just can't get to the top of that mountain. So you have to be okay with looking at yourself where you're at with the same love and compassion and belief and value of self as you would when you get to the top of the mountain. You have to. You can't find your value when you're at the top of the mountain. You can't. Because it's not you at the top of the mountain. It's whatever that you pushed hard enough that got achieved at the top of the mountain. You have been with yourself all along. So some people say, I'll be happy once this happens. Once I get through this, I'll appreciate and love myself. Well, you can't start when you get to the top of the mountain, because you know what happens? You'll never appreciate and love yourself any other place. And that can be a dangerous and a dark place to say, hey, I'm only happy if I'm on the top of the mountain. It's the middle of the mountain where you get to see yourself. You get to see what you need to add, what you need to take away. If you've ever climbed a mountain, maybe you went on a long walk, and one of the things you want to make sure you do is lighten the load. You don't want to take this heavy backpack. It slows you down. And so there are going to be things in the middle of the mountain that got you to the middle of the mountain that you got to let go of, because they're not going to get you from the middle of the mountain to the top. And that's when a lot of times people say, well, you've changed. That's when you start spending more time with yourself. And that's when you start having truth serum with yourself. I'll tell you firsthand, finding yourself outside of everything else that's going on around you can almost seem weird at first, because you put yourself in all your situations. You put yourself in all your acquaintances. You put yourself in all your experiences. But there's a whole you in there. And when you're in the middle of the mountain, you have a chance to meet that. The other thing is, in the middle of the mountain, take your time to rest. Take your time to rest. It took energy for you to give all you had to take you from that bottom to that middle. You worked hard. You may not remember it because, well, you